Hello, dear viewers of the channel All About Ancient Rome. With me, Yavor Ivarov, the guy who loves, as most of you, the history of ancient Rome. Today, the topic will be who was the greatest military and political leader in the ancient times. And when I say ancient times, I mean ancient Macedon and Roman Empire and Roman Republic before that. My arguments are that the greatest, of course, we all agree that the greatest general of the Macedonian state, this is Alexander the Great, and the greatest general for most of the historians in the Roman history is Julius Caesar. My opinion and my argument is that Julius Caesar was much greater general, or if not much greater for sure general and politician than Alexander the Great. And to support my view and arguments, I will look at the historical facts and the historical sources, which are so crucial and important when you are doing any comparison, especially comparing these two great military and political leaders. Let's look first how they come to power. How Alexander the Great became king of Macedon and did something before that help him to become a king of Macedon and to have this capacity to go for such a war, especially in the east against the Persian Empire. And was it something help Caesar, and was the fundament was laid for him and to be easier for him to become a political leader and a prominent military commander. We know that Alexander the Great was born in a royal family. His mom, Olympia, she was from Epirus, which they did not consider as Macedonians. His father was the greatest king, Philip II. And here we have to pause and look at the picture. Alexander the Great was born in a royal family. Philip II is one of the greatest generals of the ancient history. He inherited the Macedonian kingdom, almost was going to disintegrate after his brother Perdiccas was killed in war against the Illyrians. But Philip was a great politician. He knew how to make politics and how to make the Macedonian state to survive. Because as we say, it was in the brink of collapsing. He made alliances with some of his neighbors. He gave in some of them demands so he can deal with the others. Generally speaking, he was a brilliant politician who recognized in military leader that the way they were fighting as well, it's not always successful. So he decided to make the military reforms, from which reforms Alexander the Great fully will take advantage. And he will march to the east and in the other battles with an army reformed by Philip II. So when we talk about Alexander the Great, we have to clearly be aware and take into account that the fundament Philip II lay. Without this fundament, Alexander the Great could not achieve anything. First, he helped to Macedonian state to survive. He is the main person this to happen, Philip II. Secondly, he can make military reforms, the famous phalanx, Macedonian phalanx. Also, he made the first time in Macedonian history, ancient Macedonian history, the army to be professional and get paid. But not only that, after he stabilized the state of Macedon, the ancient Macedon, Philip II started to expand the state. And it's very important when the state has a stable finance. And he make one step further to ensure that the Macedonian state won't be short of gold. He conquered the famous, in ancient time in Southeast Europe, mines, golden mines, known as Pangeon or Pangay. This major step was made to financial stability and not only give great financial opportunities for the Macedonian state, give Pangeon or Pangay give Philip II 1,000 talents a year, which is equivalent of 26.5 thousands of gold, kilos of gold. So 26.5 tons of gold a year. Well, somebody will say, well, okay, paying the army, but why else he will need this money apart of building luxury buildings, maybe clothes? Well, the money are very important when it comes to politics, as we know even in the modern days. He was able to pay mercenaries, to pay not only his armies. He could bribe the other rulers if he needs it, if he needs time to solve problems, say for example in the north, and he needs peace in the east. For example, so the money was very important when it comes to politics as well. And Philip II made this possible and make really not only independent and strong, but financially really a might, the Macedonian kingdom. So we see that when Alexander became a king, he already has all this done for him. Reforms in the army, successful Macedonian phalanx, money to pay the army, one extended, strong Macedonian kingdom, a mighty kingdom which was the strongest in Southeast Europe, and even we can say Asian Minor, if we are not count the Persian Empire and the rest. So really, Philip II, Macedonian kingdom in his range reach his we can call crescendo. And yes, we cannot diminish the skills of Alexander the Great as a military leader, but without this fundament, he could not achieve anything. But you say, but he, maybe somebody will argue, but he's a great military leader and so on. Without the army and the reforms Philip II made, he would not have this instrument to shine and to display and to show his tactical supremacy, his tactical genius. It's like having a guy who can shoot very well. He has this ability and talent to shoot well and to learn to shoot well. But without the gun, you cannot learn to shoot well and to show your genius as a talented shooter. Without this gun, the gun was made and provided by Philip II to Alexander. So he proved himself in 338 BC in the Battle of Cheronea that Alexander, only 18 years of age, is a great military leader. But the things were hazy for him. The things didn't go as he wished to. His father married again. The last of his wives was Macedonian. She was accepted by the elite better than his Alexander's mom, Olympia, who, how we say, she was from Epirus. And the relationship already deteriorates between Alexander the Great and Philip II. The reasons can be many. We're not going to talk about them, but we can well imagine, even in the Greek mythology, gods hate each other, the son and the father, the arrogance, the struggle for power. In this case, with Alexander and Philip, it wasn't struggle for power, but Philip had in his hand that he could make the decision who's going to be his successor. And of course, every son wants to exceed his father. The father a lot of times feel that he's trying to be outmaneuver even his pride by his son. And we probably witnessing a typical story between Alexander and Philip. Philip won many battles. Let's not forget that he was a great military leader as well. He lost his eye in one of the battles. He proved himself as can endure really harsh weather, battles and wounds and so on. So maybe this competition between them, who was the greatest, maybe was one of the main reasons. But we're not going to focus on that. When we're going back to his last wife of Philip II, he has a son, and already the tension between and the deterioration of the relationship between Alexander the Great and Philip II was there, and it was a threat that he might pass the power to his son by the Macedonian wife, the little baby, who of course in a few years will grow up, and possible that the Philip will live long enough to see him in age to take over the Macedonian kingdom. So there is no evidence who was behind the assassination of Philip II in 336 BC. But I am prone to believe strongly, as many historians, that behind it was Olympia, the mother of Alexander the Great, and maybe Alexander the Great himself. Why? Who has the most interest to become a king? The motive to do this killing, this assassination? Of course it's Olympia, because she's threatened. She already was the wife on the side, the wife, not favorite wife. She was out of favor with Philip. Also, in that road, looked like it was going as well, the relationship between Alexander and Philip. That Philip II has another favorite son, and that was the latest son of the Macedonian wife. So the motives are there, and motives pointed out Olympia and maybe Alexander himself. And another suspicion strongly arose from the fact that when the assassin was caught, instead of having interrogation and maybe torturing if necessary to find out who was behind the assassination, Alexander the Great killed the assassin. So that's again to me pointed out again that behind this assassination was Olympia or Alexander. Of course, we don't have clear evidence that he and his mom are behind it, and we're never probably going to know, but everything points to them. But the main point I try to make is, why was easier for Alexander to become the greatest leader of this great kingdom than Caesar? First, he inherited already well-worked military machine. He inherited kingdom with an enormous amount of money, gold, coming in every year to the budget, if you like, to this kingdom. The kingdom was big and strong, so Alexander became straightforward one of the leaders of one of the greatest kingdom in the Southeast Europe. That what happened to Caesar? Let's compare, and that's why I want to say that, that's why I want to make my points and arguments that Caesar was greater than Alexander in any possible aspect. Caesar coming from a noble family, but they were already, we won't say poor, but they weren't wealthy at all. The last consul of this family was a long time ago, before Caesar was born. So he didn't have any strong connection in the Senate. He didn't have any popularity among the people. How can be if he's not a politician with money and influence? So Caesar come from nothing, if you like, compare Alexander. So Caesar has to build everything from scratch. For example, even Alexander, when he wasn't a king, he was given the chance to lead the army. Some units of the army in the Battle of Chaeronea, and he showed his talent, display his willingness to fight, bravery, and how great tactician he is. But Caesar was not given this chance, even though he wished to be given, but He did not have this chance. He has to climb to the ladder to get to this opportunity to shine as a military or administrative figure in the Roman state. And let's not forget that the Roman state as well was much more sophisticated and complex than the Macedonian state. Macedonian kingdom, it was straightforward. After the assassination in 336 BC, Alexander was proclaimed as a king, again because he proved as well himself. Undoubtedly he was proclaimed because he gained respect among the troops, but he was given the chance to show his talent. That Caesar did not have this chance given by his father or by his state. He has to work everything hard, every single thing, even the opportunity to fight. He had to fight and work hard for it. And again, let's see as well how this happened, how Caesar climbed the ladder and become the first in the Roman Republic, or maybe the last of the Roman Republic, because we know after the civil wars after him, Augustus will become the first emperor and the Republic will be dead. First, Caesar was elected is ideal in 65 BC. This is a position in Rome that gives you power to give you opportunity, and your responsibility was to look after Rome, to look after the law and order, the cleanliness of the city, and also give you access to entertain the people in Rome. So there was a complex of responsibility, and Caesar seized this opportunity to introduce himself to the public. He borrowed a lot of money. Again, he didn't have much. And first he displayed 150 pairs of gladiators to fight in the honor of his dad, who was dead, if I'm not mistaken, 10 years before that. So again, Caesar has to be creative, he has to be smart, and he has to borrow money. And that was risky, because if in the future he does not make money, he could have gone to jail, or they did not have jails, but he could go to exile. A lot of bad things could happen to him, and also for definite will be the end of his just beginning career in politics. The next post he was elected, again with the help of powerful friends and borrowing more money. In 63, 2 years later, he was elected as Pontifex Maximus, which was a chief priest in Rome, very prestigious position, more religious than anything else, but the prestige and the weight of the prestige of this position was really had a huge weight. Then he was elected in 61, sent to 60 to be a governor of Hispania Ulterior, and as part of Spain and Portugal. And he showed himself as a great administrator. He made money there. He waged war to some of the smaller tribes. He proved himself as a great general. He made money, of course. He was a great friend of Crassus. Helped him, one of the richest guy at the time. And he helped him with his political career as backing him up, and not only politically, but financially. And there was a problem between Pompey, the greatest general, and Crassus. They disliked each other after, especially the revolt of Spartacus, the biggest in history, ancient history, slave rebellions, who rose. The number of the rebellions were really great, and this great leader, but fast deteriorate the relationship between Crassus and Pompey after this revolt. I don't want to go to details, but Caesar was the one who made peace between them. He was smart when he makes his political maneuvers, not only the troops in the battlefield. and he was able to win the favor, continue winning the favor of Crassus and also the backing up of Pompey. So that's how was created the first triumvirate in the 60 BC, and which is mean the rule of three, and Caesar and Pompey and Crassus were ruling the empire. So Caesar was given the opportunity to shine. He was elected 59 BC as consul. In 58 to 50 he will be governor of Gaul, and he will wage a war to the Gauls there. And let's pause here and look at how the military careers of Alexander the Great developed from the beginning. Alexander the Great fought in Chaeronea before becoming a king. 2 years later he will become a king and wage war in the east and march with confident, experienced, reform army with plenty of money to bring with him Greek and Trajan mercenaries. Then Caesar went only with a few legions in Gaul. He will rise another 4, 6. Later in the years, the number will increase. Train them and go and fight. Then Alexander already had army ready to fight, experienced army. Then Caesar has to write over the years many more legions, first 2, then 6, 4, 8, so on, and train them and harden them in the battle. And who was facing Alexander in his campaign in Persia? He was facing the mighty Persian Empire. But Persian Empire, without diminishing the strength and the means of such empire, or if you face it as an enemy, the Persian Empire was one big state machine that was brought, many nations were brought to it. And not all nations who fought under the Persian command were that loyal and felt togetherness as the Gauls in Gaul. So I'm trying to say, I'm not saying that Persian Empire was easier than the Gauls. But when you're facing enemy, which are only, or many of the armies, the units in the armies, fighting for the Persian, not because they love the Persian, or for fear, or because that's their duty to the empire. When you're facing Gauls who fought for their freedom, and let's not forget, all Gauls were coming, they have a common language, culture, religion. They felt this togetherness even though they were fighting against each other, killing each other, selling each other to slavery, even to the Romans for wine the previous years and centuries. They had something in many things in common. As I said, language, culture, religion, genetic togetherness, if you like. They were coming from one ancient tribes or ethnical branch of the human race. So, in this case, Caesar was facing ferocious fighters who were as well as number many times outnumber Caesar. But let's continue to see how much longer it took Caesar to become first in the state. He has to fight 8 years in Gaul to submit all the Gauls after rebels and after rebellion. 8 years or a tough war in Gaul. Even then, his power in Rome, it wasn't secure. After the death of Crassus in the east, the triumvirate slowly but surely was going to the end and collapse. Pompey was becoming jealous of the glory of that he was winning in Gaul and in the previous places, but especially in Gaul, sending a lot of spoils and money, spoiled the Roman people. and Caesar really became popular among the ordinary common people. And of course that's made Pompey jealous. So he started to act, sometimes secretly, against Caesar in the Senate, in his political movements. And really the end of this unwritten contract between two of them comes to the end when Julia, the daughter of Caesar, who was married to Pompey, died in childbirth. And then Pompey wanted to deprive from all powers Caesar, maybe from all his glory as well, and to put end of his career, political career, military career, as he proclaimed in the Senate Caesar as enemy of Rome, as Cato accused him of bribery, illegal warfare, corruption, and he was called back in Rome. He has to disband his troops. He has to leave the legions there, disband his legions, and go back to Rome. The border between Italy and Gaul was somewhere in North Italy. They haven't found yet where is really Rubicon, and this little river still exists, but that's not important. That was the border between Italy and Caesar has to cross as a private citizen this river, come to the Senate and face a trial, as I said, of legal warfare, corruption, treachery, and many other smaller and bigger accusations. So he crossed Rubicon. He has to cross as a private citizen. That meant the end of his military political career, because more likely Caesar was facing exile, if not death, and that will be the end of everything he was achieved so far. So hard and so time consuming. But Caesar decided it's time to shine again, but unfortunately to fight against his own people. And how he is claimed to be said, he said the dice is cast, and the dice cast, and he crossed the Rubicon not as a private citizen, as some of his troops. So again, Caesar has to fight again, even though he won so many battles. We will look at the battles as well of Alexander, the enemies of Alexander, and Alexander troops, Caesar troops, and Caesar's enemies. That's very important as well to consider why the argument is strong and I support it. Because it's important how many troops, who you fought. As I touch a little bit, it's independent who is your enemies. And how many troops you had and how many the enemy had. And the motivation of these troops, the experience of these troops. So Caesar faced a war against Roman legions. Some of them experienced, some not so experienced. But to become first in the state, even though he has so many battles won, only in Gaul, as I said, he spent 8 years of bloody war. And he crossed the Rubicon, and finally he would defeat in Pharsalus Pompey with much less, 3 times less troops than Pompey. But his enemies forget that his legions were toughened and hard and very experienced after 8 years in the Gaul. So he won and became not yet even defeating Pompey, pursued him to Egypt, and he was killed there by the Pharaoh, the order of the Pharaoh. The resistance against Caesar continued, so he has to fight another 3 years in North Africa, in Egypt. First in Egypt and then in North Africa against the supporters of the Senate. So we see that it took him another while, and facing strong, well-trained Roman troops who knew how his troops will work, how they fought in general. And they were trained to fight the same way. So we see that again, it's another harder step made for Caesar to become first in the Roman Republic. Finally, he defeated, after 3 years, for 49 to 45 BC, he fought, and finally he put the end of the civil war, and he became the first man in Rome. In 406, he was proclaimed as a dictator for 10 years, and again, not the full power was given to him. It was agreement between him and the Senate that after these 10 years, they will assess again this agreement and this dictatorship, and if it's not needed, or even before these 10 years come to the end of these 10 years of dictatorship, that they will review it every year and see if that should continue. Yes, it was illegal act, but that's a different story. That was a precedent in the Roman traditions and laws, if you like. But that's a different topic. We're talking about and focusing on the arguments. Was it easier for Caesar comparing Alexander to come in power? And who was the greatest of two of them? Again, he wasn't given the full power. It was agreed between him and the Senate that his dictatorship will be assessed every year. But in 44, 2 years later, he was proclaimed as a dictator perpetuo, which means the dictator for life. Then the Senate saw that that is a threat to them. But then Caesar became, after so many years of fighting, so many different positions he was in the Roman state, with so many different risky maneuvers, borrowing money, fighting civil wars, making sometimes the impossible to bring himself to the table of power, like in the first triumvirate. He made the peace between the two greatest men at the time, Pompey and Crassus. So it was extremely difficult for him, extremely bravely. It's really smart. He acted really smartly, outmaneuver all his enemies. But not only in the political scene. He has to fight many, many times in the battlefield. Not only against the external enemies of Rome or the enemies he created, because some people said that, and historians probably they are right, he created this war in Gaul to gain popularity, money, and military glory. But it took him many, many years to become, finally in 44 BC, first in Rome. And did not last long. In the 80th of March, that's 15th of March in 44, he was assassinated. But let's look at the battles, because all the people will say, well, Persian Empire, mighty Persian Empire, it brought some sources, ancient sources saying that the Persian Empire brought to the Darius the second, the Darius the third brought 500,000 in the battlefield. But when they assess the terrain, the place, they find out that you can't deploy 500,000 people. It is impossible. But how of my great mentors in UCD, assistant professor Tain said that, and the other scholars, that the Greeks likes to exaggerate. The exaggeration. But let's see how the historians saw it and how they calculate these troops, which it is close to what the number of these troops were. Let's see the great battle of but first let's look at how many number of battles, major battles, fought Alexander and Caesar. Caesar again proved that he's better and greater general, military leader than Alexander the Great. He fought between 15 and 20 major battles. And when I say major battles, I don't mean that I calculate one major battle between 20 and 10,000 and then of Caesar, and then you have Alexander with 50,000 against 70,000. So it's the difference is huge. And you say, yeah, well, Alexander fought against bigger number of troops, so that could be counted as a major battle. And this one should not, the Caesar one. No, they are in almost all equal, or Caesar face more enemies. First, Caesar fought 15 to 20 major battles. Alexander the Great fought 9. But let's look at the battles as well, because that's very important. How many troops were involved, and who was the enemies? How many the Romans they were having on their side? How many Macedonians against how many Persians or whatever enemies, Indians were there against the Macedonians? The Battle of Pharsalus in 448 BC, which Caesar fought against Pompey troops, the last battle between two of them. Then he will continue fighting against the Senate and his sons. But let's see who he fought. So the troops, Caesar troops, were between 22 and 23,000 legionaries and 1,000 cavalry. The Pompeian troops, Pompey troops were between 45 and 50,000 with 7,000 cavalry. And Caesar won decisively this battle. Battle of Gergovia, 52 BC. 80,000 Gaulish troops with against 80,000 troops of Caesar. Then you have battle in Munda, when Caesar said, all battles I fought for glory, this one I fought for life. Why? Because he was facing extremely experienced Roman troops led by the two sons of Pompey. Caesar troops were in Munda in Spain in 45. 40,000 troops. The Pompeian forces well trained and experienced as well, like Caesar's troops, 70,000. In Alesia again, some estimate that Caesar fought between 100, modern scholars, between 150 to 250,000 troops inside, and then the relief troops coming. Inside troops maybe between 50 and 80,000, and outside the relief troops 150, 250,000 troops against 80,000 Roman troops. And we see how significant these battles were and how hard it was to win them. And you have to be really extremely good general to win them. And again, many of these battles he fought against the well-trained Roman troops or united Gauls. Let's see Alexander. 9 major battles and many small engagements, skirmishing and sieges. As for Caesar as well, Caesar had over 50 smaller engagements, skirmishing and sieges. Battle of Gaumea, 331 BC. Alexander troops 40 to 50,000. Darius 50 to 100,000. So it's very debatable if there were how much more than 50,000. Maybe there were 50,000 troops. Battle of Issus, 333 BC, 333 BC. Alexander 30,000 troops. Persians between 50 and 100,000. Battle of Hydaspes in India, 326. Alexander, 40,000 Indian troops, between 20 and 30,000, and 4,000 cavalry and 200 war elephants. We see that even the infantry here are the same number as Alexander the Great. And as I said a few minutes ago, which enemy you face? When you face the Persian army, Not that they weren't good and you should not fear them, but they were war machine that was part of many. It has many elements, ethnical elements from all the empire. They did not have the motivations as the goals. How I said, they were have a common language, religion, genetic origin, if you like. And many times Caesar faced experience and outnumber him Roman troops. Well trained, fight the same way. So in this case, again, you can make the arguments that Caesar was a greater general than Alexander the Great. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you disagree, please make comments and we can discuss that and see if you can prove me that I'm wrong. But again, even when I want to end the episode as well, to know that Caesar even showed more mercy than Alexander. He was more merciful. He exceeded him. He was better even in that aspect, greater leader than Alexander. Caesar was forgiving even his greatest enemies. Even in Gaul, when he fought against people that it's not in common with the Romans. They spoke different language. They have different culture. They look different. Most of the cases. Caesar showed mercy even there to them leaders and people. The end, in all the towns, he would chop the hands of the last rebellion because he was fed up and want to send a message to the whole Gaul. Please don't rise against me. I had enough of your rebellion after rebellion. But generally speaking, if you look at that point in history, the sources, Caesar never killed one of his close friends in a moment of rage or when he was drunk, that we have witnessing paranoia, and in time of rage and drunkenness, Alexander killed one of his closest generals and friends. So even in that, I think Caesar exceeded as a person, as a leader, Alexander the Great. Again, I'm not trying to diminish the talent and the leadership of Alexander, but let's look at the facts. And again, if you disagree, please make comments, but always when talk about history, they have to be supported with evidence and some plausible conclusions. So, goodbye, I hope you enjoyed, and I see you in the next episode about ancient Rome.